So let's be honest guys, 2020 has not been a good year. Just watch the news and you'll see that there's so much turmoil happening in our world right now that you would think the gods above would be sending down a meteor to destroy us all. Well, that's exactly not happening. What's happening instead is we're getting a different meteor, and that is the Royal Enfield Meteor 350. And here it is in the flesh. So there's been a lot of hype surrounding this bike obviously, and that's because it is a Royal Enfield after all. And this bike will feature the new engine, which is the J platform engine. Now of course we all know the UC engine will no longer be available in all the 350cc models, and we've been eagerly awaiting to see what the changes will be to this bike. And if you are not familiar, the Meteor is actually the replacement for the Thunderbird X. So the Meteor is still an all-new bike designed from the ground up, and it looks very good. The low-slung body is crafted around a twin downtube spine frame. It looks smooth, and the 15-liter fuel tank, the 41mm front forks, and of course the alloy wheels with disc brakes on the front and rear give it some new-age muscle. It now has modern elements as well, such as an LED taillight and LED around the halogen headlight. It also features a dual instrument pod, including a digital pod for connected navigation. So we've had the bike for a few days now, and I have to say that when we spoke to Royal Enfield, they told us that they've definitely designed this bike keeping in mind that this will be a global product. So they did want the quality and the finishing to be on a different level, on a global level actually. And I have to say, after riding this bike and feeling it and touching it, it does have a significant improvement in terms of quality when you look at the older Thunderbird X, which really was very poor in quality in my opinion. So the biggest changes now, obviously, as I mentioned, is the design elements and the engine. But what really stands out about this bike is the ergonomics now. In the top end variant that I've got here with me, which is the Supernova, the seat is extraordinary. It is beautiful, so comfortable, so plush to sit on the highway when you're riding. Even in the city, it's absolutely amazing. Now, when I get on the bike, you'll notice the ergonomics are very relaxed riding. And I love the way the handlebars are placed and the foot pegs are placed. It's a very, very comfortable riding position. So again, a very nice seating position on this bike. I actually love it for highway touring. I've done some highway touring already, and this bike feels very, very nice and plush on the road. To make that plush ride, the Royal Enfield had to make the suspension a lot more stiff. And because of that stiffness, you will find that when you're riding on broken roads, or if you're heading to Ladakh, for example, this would not be the ideal bike for that situation, because this is primarily going to be a bike for long distance touring. The suspension really does not absorb bumps very well. I had a few rough roads that we rode on just today, and really, not the best feeling at all. But on the highway at high speeds, certainly this bike feels very well planted on the road, and you can easily cruise for hours and hours with total peace of mind. Another good thing is, of course, the fuel tank is fairly large. It's a 15-liter fuel tank, so you don't have to refuel a lot. So that's perfect for cruising again. Now coming to the engine, the biggest changes, of course, as we know, is that this is now the J platform engine. Enfield has done a great job in making it a much more refined unit now compared to the previous UCE. To make the engine feel smoother and less vibey, Royal Enfield has included a primary balance shaft. They've altered the fuel and air calibration, increased the bore and reduced the stroke, and tweaked the clutch, just amongst many others. Now, Royal Enfield also wanted to retain the classic low-end grunt, and to do that, they stuck with the 2-valve setup and introduced an overhead cam to increase the revs. What you get now is a much more refined, smooth and torquey engine. This obviously means, though, on paper the torque is down to 27 Nm, but it still feels just as powerful as the previous engine. Obviously, this affects top-end power, and you can feel that as you pick up speed as the bike runs out of breath. But you get more power now with 20.2 bhp at a higher rev count of 6,100 RPM. So while the accelerating power decreases as you go faster, you will still manage to get a higher top speed. The 5-speed transmission also feels reassuring, and it's much better built now. Gear shifts are slick and click right into place. So despite the specs that it has, it's certainly not the most powerful in the segment. You have the new Honda Highness, and of course you have the Benelli, which are a little bit more powerful. But in terms of refinement now, this engine really took me by surprise. I did not expect it to be this refined. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, Enfield said they wanted to make the quality on a global standard like the 650 Twins. This, however, is still not quite there. It is definitely a lot more refined than before, but the overall refinement level still, could use some improvement. If you're riding, let's say, less than 80 kilometers per hour, the engine feels very nice and composed, and there are no vibrations whatsoever around any of the body panels at all. But when you go above 80 kilometers an hour, you do feel a little bit of strain on the engine, and you do start to feel small, very small vibrations on the foot pegs, but they don't bother you at all. It's not like that it's going to fall apart sensation at all. It feels still pretty good. And what even surprised me more was that this engine can actually ride at pretty high speeds. So on the Greater Noida Expressway, we managed to ride for an average speed of about 120 kilometers an hour, which is pretty fast for this bike. And that's also the top speed. There was no traffic on the road whatsoever. It was a nice, fantastic, wide open highway. And for about 15 minutes, I was just cruising at 120 kilometers, which is the speed limit, by the way, on that road. And really, the bike felt very calm and composed, and the engine felt a little strained, not too much to worry about though. So really in that respect, the engine did have significant improvements. You still get good low-end torque, you still get a good mid-range, but the top-end power is obviously not there. But still, with the price you're paying for this bike, it's going to be less than 2 lakh rupees. You can't complain. For a 350cc model, this has more than enough power for you to have a good time cruising at triple-digit speeds. Now, the Meteor is obviously a fantastic bike. It looks good on the road, it's incredibly comfortable and smooth to ride. And yes, it still retains that iconic engine thump character. It also gets phone connectivity now and dual-channel ABS across all the variants. But I do want to say there are still a few problems though with the Meteor, besides the stiff suspension. The brakes could be a bit more responsive. They seem a bit weak though, even though the ABS system works very well. And the digital tripper still has a few bugs that need to be fixed. My navigation wasn't responding at all. But in all honesty, I would never connect my phone to a bike because I find it very distracting. Of course, this bike certainly is a massive improvement from the older Thunderbird X models. It really is showing the direction that Royal Enfield is moving in. It's a good direction. And the fact that they've now got digital instrument clusters that are also now compatible for phone connectivity and navigation is another step they're taking towards getting younger riders onto the Royal Enfield bandwagon. But still, the brand is so very strong and they've been doing very well. Their new models have always been successful, with exceptions, of course. But still, the main gist of it is that this new bike really is a good motorcycle that's come out from Royal Enfield, and something that we actually expected a few years ago. It's taken them some time to reach this level, but we're glad that we're finally making products that are actually high in quality and feel good and are easy for anybody to ride.